when using sampled instruments, we can treat them just as any synthesizer. I'm going to load Kontakt onto this MIDI track. And once it's loaded, I'm going to try to load a certain bank. Let's see which one. Let's say one of the pianos, the Gentleman. Now, when it's loaded, I can see some basic controls that the manufacturer of this pack is providing. We can still see that it's loading all the samples. You can see the amount of memory the samples are going to take. So once this is loaded, it's all ready to play. So I can send MIDI to this track. It's armed, so it's receiving any MIDI I'm inputting. So I have a realistic piano right there. I do have some options on how I can change its tone. So soft and hard, that's pretty self-explanatory. I can choose how the lid was on the piano, so open and closed lid. A small difference, but a difference nevertheless. I can change the dynamic range it has. So I can play harder, softer. Also the resonances. And I can change those using the pedal. I do not have a pedal controller. I don't play the piano actually. But also one of the other things we can change is the space in which it is. So this is just a reverb effect added onto this sampler. And as I've told you, there is a lot of synth-like features that we have in samplers today. But it's easy as that. So loading a sampled instrument just like this and playing it. We can even choose the console hole, a different one. So that's how easy it is just to use one of these. Now we can check what's going on under the hood. So we can check the samples for each one of those. And as you can see, we have a sample for each one of the keys. So we have a separate recorded sample of each note, and it's mapped to a MIDI note. So every time we press a note, like this one, it's playing this sample. If I play a lower note, now it's playing this sample. So actually sampler instruments don't have to transpose one note we recorded, because in the case of a piano, that wouldn't sound that good, would it? If we had a really low note recorded and then we just sped it up to actually make it sound higher in pitch, that wouldn't sound natural as a natural piano sounds. A sample of piano played faster, we would hear that the reverberation, so the space around that piano where it was recorded, sounds differently. So to avoid that, manufacturers of banks like this, they record a sample for each note. So there is a different sound recorded for each note, and those are mapped to the keyboard. So that when we play a high note, we get a different sample, which is actually a high note recorded. Now let's check out some other instruments. So this is session horns. I'm just going to wait for the instrument to load completely. And you can see how much memory that's going to take. So this is all being stored in our RAM memory. So that once we play a note, it could immediately be reproduced. Okay, now it's loaded. Let's try it out. Maybe higher. lower. So let's see what's under the hood for this. Now what we do have for this trumpet is a lot of samples recorded, and then another one recorded for a higher velocity value. So we have a different sample for when you're playing a note softly, and a different sample for when you're playing a note a bit harder on the keyboard. And that goes from the velocity value 75 and upwards, and from 75 and downwards, 74 downwards actually. So this way we have some expression on those trumpets. Let's try that. So you see, when I play it hard, it's shorter. When I play it softer, it's just a longer delayed note. So we have control over how the trumpet sounds by how it was recorded and provided for us. So many different combinations are available in virtual instruments made in samplers just like this. We can even have the drums. Let's try out a drum sample. This is also a full drum kit. I'm presuming it's going to take some time to reload. Okay, it's done. So let's see what's in this. So you see, we can play different parts of the drum by just sending a different note. And if we see what's under the hood, we can see that we have a lot of different notes recorded. You see, for the drums, it's even more complex. So the harder we press, a different kind of a sample is recorded. So for each one of these notes, let's say, for each one of the hits, we have different samples. Depending on how hard we press the note, depending on the velocity value we are sending with the MIDI note, we're going to play a different sample every time. Why? Because that's how drums sound. If you hit them harder, they sound quite differently. So to make that realistic, the producer of this sampler instrument has actually done their job really well. So they recorded each one of these hits with different strengths and provided that for you so that you can actually articulate and make your drums sound really natural. Now let's see one of the kits that is, let's say, native to Ableton, like this. So I'm going to choose a sampler, this time a sampler, a fully fledged sampler, and I'm going to choose one of these instruments. Let's say an analog bass. Let's see what that sounds like. So we have this sample being played. Let's see the zones of it. So in this instrument, in this example, we have this one sample playing for the entire stretch of our keyboard. So if we play a higher note, we are playing the same sample, but it's just being pitched up. That's it. Now let's try another instrument. Okay, so let's see in the example of this one. It has a lot of different areas. So now, playing a low note, we are playing this sample. Just this one. If I play a higher note, that's right here, in between these two, I'm actually playing this sample. If I play a higher one, now I'm playing this sample. So we do have different samples recorded for each piece of the keyboard. It's not a different sample for each note, but stretching one note to not so much high up is not going to do that much damage to the quality of the sound. So the producer of the actual instrument got away with it with just recording a fewer notes instead of a note for each one of the keys. So they're recording C and F notes for everything. So F sharp note, then a C note, then an F sharp note, then a C note. So they actually divided each octave of notes into two and recorded samples for those. Only the high ups, really the high ups after C5, those are all being played by the single sample. So let's try that out. Higher. That's always the same sample. And it's always this one. So see, samplered instruments can really sound realistic because what we are actually playing are real sounds recorded off of a piano, off of a synthesizer, off of drum kits, organs, trumpets, whatever we need. So we can actually create a trumpet sounding piano. We can have our computer MIDI keyboard play a trumpet or a violin or a cello or an entire orchestra at once. Depending on what was recorded and what was placed inside that sampler bank, we can provide ourselves with an easy way to play different instruments just using MIDI.